All right, so buckle up, everyone, because today we are taking a deep dive into desert. And no, not the kind with sand and cacti. We're talking about the philosophical kind, that tricky idea of what people deserve. You probably throw the word around like, I deserve a raise, or,
Yeah.
he deserves better. But trust me, it gets a lot more complicated than that. So to guide us through this, we're going straight to the source, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, to really unpack this whole desert thing.
Yeah, it's a concept we use so often almost without even thinking about it. But then when you actually start to pick it apart, you realize, wow, we're making a lot of assumptions here. It's not just a feeling, right? It's not just like, oh, I feel like this person should have this thing.
Exactly. And to kick things off, let's tackle a big one right away.
Right.
How is desert any different from just being entitled to something? I mean, on the surface, they both seem to involve getting stuff, right? Like, if I buy a movie ticket, I am entitled to see the movie, but like, does that automatically mean I deserve to see it?
Ooh, that's such a good question, and it really highlights that core difference. Entitlement, it comes from systems, rules, agreements. You buy that ticket, you sign a contract, you're born into a royal family or something. Those things give you entitlements. But desert, it goes deeper than that. It's about what's morally fitting, what's appropriate, regardless of those like structures we've set up.
So it's like, my ticket gets me into the theater, but whether I deserve to actually enjoy the movie, well, that might depend on if I'm like, being that annoying person talking through the whole thing.
Exactly. The rules say you can be there, but desert, it's a separate judgment. It looks at actions, qualities, even circumstances sometimes. Like, take a student who, I don't know, plagiarized their entire thesis. They might be entitled to graduate, if they haven't been caught, but do they actually deserve that degree? I think most people would say no.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this. So, someone could inherit a ton of money, but be a horrible person who doesn't deserve a penny of it. And on the flip side, someone could spend their life helping others and deserve all the good in the world, even if no system actually rewards them for it.
You got it. And to unpack these scenarios, it helps to kind of break down this concept of desert, almost like an equation. You've got three main parts. First, you have the deserver, and that can be a person, a group, even a city, or like an abstract cause. Then you've got the desert itself, what they deserve. And this is important. It can be good, bad, or even neutral.
Neutral. Huh. I never thought of it like that.
Think of it like deserving a C grade if your work was just average. It's not a punishment, just what's fitting. And then finally, the desert-based, the thing that makes them deserving. Often this is like a property, action, or quality they have. Good work gets a good grade. A heroic act deserves praise. Committing a crime makes one deserving of punishment.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But sometimes it feels like it's not clear who actually gets to give someone what they deserve. Like that old McDonald's slogan, you deserve a break today. Well, who's giving you that break? Can a company even deserve something if there's no one to, I don't know, bestow it?
You're right, and that's where the concept of the distributor comes in. Sometimes it's obvious, like a teacher gives grades, a judge gives sentences, but other times, like with that McDonald's slogan, it's vague. Maybe it's just like society at large endorsing the idea that breaks are good, and then sometimes there's no plausible distributor at all, which makes you wonder, is this desert claim even valid? Like, imagine a foundation saying everyone deserves a healthy life. Well-intentioned, sure, but who's actually obligated to make that happen?
So we've got these parts, but even if we can pinpoint them, how do you actually justify a desert claim? It can't just be a gut feeling, can it? Like, I can't just say someone deserves something and poof, it's true.
Exactly, and that's where philosophers have really struggled. One way is consequentialism, judging desert based on whether the outcome is good. But that gets tricky fast. Let's say a guilty person could be punished, but doing so would start, I don't know, riots. So does that mean suddenly they don't deserve punishment? Just because the consequences of giving it to them would be bad?
Or the reverse, right? Where someone gets rewarded not because they've earned it, but because it's strategically useful. Like giving in to a hostage taker's demands, that's a good example. Saves lives, sure. But it feels like we're rewarding bad behavior.
Exactly. Useful doesn't equal deserved. Another way is to try and justify desert through institutions. Like, you only deserve it if there's a rule for it. But then what about systems that are themselves unjust? Think about, slavery. That whole institution gave slave owners this entitlement to power they absolutely did not deserve.
It's like you said before, entitlement and desert, they don't always line up. So if consequences aren't reliable and institutions can be messed up, what are we left with? Just opinions.
Well, some philosophers go down that road, tying desert to what they call appraising attitudes, meaning it's connected to how others feel it's fitting to react. So, like everyone applauding a hero, maybe their desert lies in being worthy of that applause. But
But I can already see a problem with that, can't you? What if the fitting attitude is messed up itself? Just because, I don't know, a cult leader approves of some awful act doesn't mean that act deserves approval, right?
exactly. And it doesn't always apply neatly, does it? Like a sick child, they might deserve our care, but that doesn't mean we need to have, I don't know, some specific attitude about them beyond basic compassion, right? It's hard to make that work universally.
So we've established
Yeah.
justifying desert is way more complicated than it first seems, but here's a simple idea. Most people would agree it feels good, even satisfying, when good things happen to good people, right? Like, how does philosophy even approach that?
Well, now we're getting into the realm of desert and value. If we try to say good is something quantifiable, how does desert even affect it? Does a world where people get what they deserve, does that world have more moral value? And if so, does that create an obligation to make it happen? Philosophers get really into the weeds here, even using math to try and figure it out.
Math. Oh, boy. That sounds intense.
It can get pretty heady. But the core idea is interesting. Imagine choosing between giving a small benefit to someone incredibly deserving versus giving a huge benefit to someone who, like, barely deserves anything. How do you weigh those options? Some philosophers say use desert as a multiplier. The more deserving someone is, the more valuable their well-being becomes.
So it's not just the amount of good, but who's receiving it. Like, a small kindness to someone truly deserving might actually outweigh a huge windfall for someone who hasn't earned it at all.
Yeah, that's the gist. But, of course, any system like this, you're going to run into problems. What if someone's already getting more than they deserve? Do their extra benefits still get multiplied? And how do you even measure that desert multiplier anyway? It's fun to think about, but applying it to the real world is tough.
Yeah, that multiplier idea does seem a bit subjective, doesn't it? Is there another way to connect desert and value without, needing a cosmic calculator or something?
Some philosophers, they prefer to focus on the fit between what someone gets and what they deserve. The closer the match, the better, regardless of the actual amounts. It avoids some of those multiplier problems and looks for a kind of moral harmony. The better things are aligned, the higher the value.
So it's less about amplifying the good and more about, like, a sense of rightness. Like a world where everyone gets exactly what they deserve would have a unique kind of, I don't know, moral beauty, even if some people deserve more than others.
Exactly. And Shelley Kagan, in his work on the geometry of desert, he takes that visual even further. He imagines a landscape of moral worth, peaks and valleys representing how desert impacts value. Pretty powerful metaphor, right?
I love that. Like, each person has their own moral mountain, and the closer they are to the peak, the better things are in terms of desert.
Hmm.
So we've got these ways of thinking about how desert affects value. But I got to be honest, it still feels kind of abstract. How does this connect back to us, to our daily lives?
Well, think about it. Most of us have this gut feeling that it's right when good things happen to good people, right? That feeling, that sense of fairness that's deeply connected to our understanding of desert. And even if we don't always agree on what people deserve or how to ensure they get it, that desire, that yearning for a world where things line up with moral worth, it's a powerful thing.
It is. And it seems like this leads us to maybe the biggest question of all.
Mm.
How does all of this relate to justice? Is the whole point of justice just to make sure everyone gets what they deserve?
That's the classic idea. And there are a bunch of desertist theories of justice out there, each with its own set of challenges. But
But what happens when giving someone what they deserve actually causes harm? Like, what if punishing a criminal would actually lead to more crime? Or what if rewarding someone's talent creates a system that excludes others who might be just as deserving?
those are great questions, and they really point to the limitations of relying just on desert when trying to build a just world.
So if desert can't be the only basis for justice, how do we balance it with other moral values, with practical concerns, with the reality of, how messy human lives are?
Well, that's a question we're going to dig into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore just how tangled up desert and justice are and really grapple with this. Is a truly just world even possible, given how slippery this concept of desert really is?
So, welcome back to our deep dive on desert. I feel like we've gone pretty deep already, talking about all the different parts of desert and how hard it is to justify. But one thing that keeps popping up for me is this idea, does a world where people get what they deserve actually have a special kind of value? Like, is it better somehow?
Oh, that's a question that's kept philosophers busy for a long, long time. On the one hand, yeah, it feels right, doesn't it? Like, it's satisfying when good things happen to good people and bad things happen to the not so good. But turning that feeling into a solid philosophical framework, that's where it gets tricky.
Right? Because value itself, I mean, what are we even talking about there? Happiness,
Mhm.
moral goodness. Is there like some cosmic scorecard being kept somewhere?
Exactly. And that's what makes it so complicated. One way to look at it is through that lens of consequentialism, remember,
Mhm.
where we judge actions based on what happens because of them. Some consequentialists would say, yeah, a world where desert is fulfilled, it just is better. It adds to the overall good. They might even try to bake desert into their calculations, like a bonus for actions that give people what they deserve.
So, like, if you could help two people, but one is more deserving, that person gets a little extra weight on the moral scale, kind of.
Yeah, you're getting it.
Yeah.
But even within that framework, there are different ways to approach that desert bonus. Some folks say, treat it like a multiplier. Like, imagine you can give someone 5 units of happiness. If they deserve 10 units, their total contribution to the world's goodness, it'd be 50. 5 times 10. But if someone deserves 20 units, same 5 units of happiness, well, now their contribution is 100.
Whoa, so the more deserving someone is, the more their happiness or well-being counts towards the total good. That's wild, but also kind of unsettling, honestly. Like, what about people already getting more than they deserve? Do those extra benefits, do they still get multiplied? And what about those situations where you're choosing between like a small good thing for someone super deserving versus a huge benefit for someone who, maybe not so much?
Those are great points. And those are some of the things that make the multiplier approach tough. It can give you some weird results, especially when you factor in things like inequality that already exists.
Right, like someone born into a rich family, they get all this privilege they didn't earn. Should their good fortune still get multiplied, even though they didn't really do anything for it? It seems like that just makes unfairness worse.
Which is why some philosophers prefer to focus on that fit between what someone gets and what they deserve. The closer the match, the better, no matter the actual amounts involved. So it kind of avoids those tricky multiplier questions, and instead it's looking for a kind of moral harmony. The better things are lined up, the more valuable the whole situation is.
So less about maximizing some abstract goodness out there and more about a feeling of things being right as they should be.
Exactly. And remember Shelley Kagan. With his geometry of desert, he takes this visual idea even further. Imagines a landscape of moral worth, peaks and valleys showing how desert impacts value. It's like everyone's got their own moral mountain, and the closer they are to the top, the closer their situation is to what they deserve, the better things are.
Oh, I love that. Makes
Yeah.
it so much easier to picture, right? But even if we go with this whole desert landscape idea, don't we still run into that problem of defining what people deserve in the first place? Who's drawing the map, deciding where the peaks and valleys are on everyone's mountain?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, and unfortunately, there's no simple answer. Even Kagan himself, he makes a distinction between what he calls non-comparative and comparative desert. Non-comparative, that's looking at how well each person's situation matches their own desert. But comparative desert, well, that's looking at how those matches relate to each other. Like, should everyone be at the same elevation on their mountains, even if their peaks are at different heights? It gets really complicated really
It's
fast.
like trying to make a level playing field when everyone's playing a different game with different rules, different goals.
Yep. And then, to make it even more complex, not all philosophers even agree that we can put a number on goodness in this way. Some of them completely reject the idea of objective value, saying it's all subjective, depends on each person's view. So where does that leave us?
Honestly, I feel like we've tumbled down this whole desert and value rabbit hole, and I'm not sure we found any solid answers. Are we even any closer to figuring out why this concept matters so much?
I think we are. Remember, even if there's no perfect formula for measuring how valuable fulfilled desert is, that basic intuition, it's still strong. Most people, they just feel like it's right for good things to happen to good people, even if we can't precisely define good or deserving in every single situation.
It's that fairness thing we talked about.
Yeah.
It feels better when things match up with what we think people deserve, even if we don't always know why.
Exactly. And I think that leads us right back to that big question. What about justice? Is a just society just one where everyone gets what they deserve?
That's the classic line, right?
Right.
But we've already seen how tricky that gets in the real world. What about when giving someone what they deserve would actually hurt things? Like punishing a criminal, but it leads to even more crime. Or rewarding someone's talent, but it creates a system that shuts other people out.
Those are some of the big challenges, right? And they highlight the problems with a system that's only based on desert.
So if desert can't be the only thing we build justice on, how do we balance it with everything else? All the other moral stuff, practical concerns, the fact that people's lives are messy.
Well, that's a question we're going to tackle head on in the last part of our deep dive. We're going to get into that tangled relationship between desert and justice and think about whether a truly just world is even possible when desert itself is such a tricky thing to pin down.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into desert. We've gone through the maze of, what people deserve, how we can even say they deserve it, and how it all ties in with value. But I think it's fair to say it's been pretty theoretical up to this point. How does this all work when we try to actually build a just world, a fair system?
That's the real challenge, isn't it? It sounds so simple, right? Everyone gets what they deserve. But like we've been saying, that one sentence is packed with a whole universe of complications.
I mean, for real. And in this last part, I was hoping we could get a little more down to earth. Remember all those big, fancy desertist theories of justice we talked about before? Universal desertism, divine moral desertism, earthly moral desertism. They all felt a little, I don't know, out there, maybe even a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, they do have that grand, almost impossible feel, don't they? Like, take universal desertism, the idea that every single desert, no matter how big or small, gets fulfilled. Can you imagine? A world where every good deed is rewarded, every little slight is punished, every missed opportunity is, compensated for. It'd be pure chaos.
Right. Who would even keep track of all that? And what about when one thing leads to another? What if by rewarding someone for something, you accidentally punish them for something else? It'd be impossible to sort out.
Completely impractical. And then there's divine moral desertism, leaving it all up to God to figure out in the afterlife. Well, not everyone believes in that, right? Plus, what if God's idea of what people deserve is totally different from ours?
It's interesting to think about, sure, but not exactly helpful when we're trying to make things fairer here and now. And don't even get me started on earthly moral desertism, with the government trying to make everyone's happiness match up perfectly with their moral goodness. That just sounds kind of terrifying, if you ask me.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. First of all, how would you even measure someone's moral worth? And what about all those times when, a really good person suffers? Or a terrible person is living it up? Do we force happiness on people or make people suffer just to even things out on some cosmic scale? Gets pretty dystopian pretty fast.
It really does. Are there any of these desertist theories that feel a little more, realistic, something we could actually use in real-world justice systems?
Some philosophers, they try to narrow it down a bit. They talk about something called political economic desertism. This focuses more on what governments should be giving to their citizens based on desert, things like taxes, protection, access to resources and all that.
Okay, now we're talking. That at least feels like something we could actually work with. But even then, how do you define what desert even means when you're talking about those things? Is it about how hard someone works, what they need, how talented they are, what they contribute to society? Who gets to decide what matters most?
That's the heart of the debate right there. And that's where you see different political ideas really clashing. Some folks, they're all about merit. The more you put in, the more you deserve to get out. Others, they say it's all about need. The people who are struggling the most, they deserve the most support, even if they can't give as much back.
It's like we're trying to make this justice cake, but everyone's got a different recipe. And then on top of all that, you have people like, what was his name? T.M. Scanlon, arguing that no theory of justice can actually be fully based on desert at all.
Yeah. Scanlon's critique, that's a big one. He's not saying desert doesn't matter, but he says it can't be the only thing we consider. There are always other moral things to think about: people's rights, their needs, the overall well-being of the whole society. Sometimes, even if someone deserves something, there might be a better reason to focus on something else.
So even if we all agree that someone earned a reward, maybe we have a moral duty to help someone who's really struggling, even if they haven't earned it in the same way. It's all a balancing act, isn't it?
It is. Think about it. You've got a talented surgeon. They deserve to make a lot of money, but they choose to work in a poor community where they get paid less. Should we force them to take a higher paying job just because they deserve it? What about all the people in that community who need their skills?
That's a really good example. Sometimes giving one person what they deserve can conflict with what other people need, maybe even what they deserve too. It's like a moral puzzle where there's no one perfect solution.
That's why Scanlon says we need a bigger picture approach. One where desert is part of the conversation, but not the only voice. He thinks a truly just system is one where everyone can look at it and say, okay, I can see why that's fair, A system that takes into account everyone's needs, their interests, and yeah, their deserts too.
So it's less about finding that perfect desert equation and more about making it part of how we think about morality in general, knowing that there are always going to be compromises, tough choices we have to make.
Exactly. And that's where our deep dive leaves you. After all this, how do you see this idea of desert shaping how you think about fairness? Do you think, in the end, people get what they deserve? And if not, what else should we be thinking about when we try to decide who gets what in a just world?
It's been a wild ride, that's for sure. But as we've seen, desert isn't just some dusty old idea from philosophy books. It's something we deal with all the time, whether we realize it or not. It's in our relationships, our systems, how we understand what it means to be human in a world where there's good, bad, and everything in between.
And even if we never reach some kind of perfect desert-based justice, I think just thinking about these questions, talking about them honestly, that's a huge step. By looking at how complicated it all is, having those open conversations, we can work towards a world that's more fair, more equal, and yeah, maybe even more deserving of all our efforts.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into desert. And remember, the conversation doesn't stop here. Take it with you, think about it when you're making choices, and let's all try to build a future where everyone has a chance to truly thrive.